What's going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with Scoop Duck on 3, coming to you on Wednesday, June the 18th, 2025, from Long Beach, California. Got a big recruiting focused episode for you guys today as Oregon is in full swing with official visits and they're heading into their final official visit weekend of the month. And joining me to break it all down is Scoop Duck owner and publisher Justin Hopkins. J Hop, how are you?
Good. I'm doing pretty good. I feel like I'm doing better than some of our subscribers on Scoop Duck that are hanging on every last update, not just from you and I, but from all over the internet and from social media. But no, I'm doing good. Recharged after my trip to Mexico. Had a fantastic time, and I've been enjoying covering the last couple of days because there's been a lot going on.
There certainly has been a lot going on, and that's why we're here to keep you guys up to date on all things Oregon recruiting. This is the Oregon Recruiting Hour. We got multiple five-star Oregon targets that are closing in on making their college commitments. It's been a big week as well because I've been over at the Elite 11 finals. Yesterday was day 1 of 3, and you have a pair of Oregon quarterback targets in the 2026 class that are out there. So it's nice to get eyes on them before both of them head to Eugene this weekend for their official visits. And we're going to get into that a little bit later on today, Justin. But before we get into that, we're going to talk about a five-star defensive back that has been on Oregon's radar, and that is five-star Spring Valley, California, Mount Miguel cornerback, Brandon Arrington Jr. The big news with him, he was originally going to be announcing his college commitment on July 5th, but he has since announced that he will be moving up his college commitment to Thursday, June 19th, and he will choose from a top two of Oregon and Texas A&M. Justin, both you and I have kind of been reporting that Texas A&M is a team to watch here. I know that was what I was feeling coming out of that Oregon official visit, was that Texas A&M was a really big threat there to Oregon on the recruiting trail, and now here we are. It's Oregon or Texas A&M for, I believe, the number one cornerback in the on-3 industry. So what was kind of your reaction to this development and where the Ducks are at?
Well, if nothing else, I like that we're going to get a decision here sooner than later. And, whether it's good or bad, at least this one will be off the board in some form or fashion. And like I do think that, like, if you kind of look at the momentum and the way things have been trending a little bit, this seems like it's in A&M's favor. Obviously, in today's NIL world, you absolutely never know until, they're putting a hat on. And it's very unique now because – I mean, I think I know, even when these guys are talking to coaches or whatever and saying, yes, I'm coming or I'm not coming or whatever, most of these guys are hanging in the balances a lot of times, just watching watching the same live stream we all are to see which hat they put on. So if I had to make my guess right now, I think it's going to be an A&M hat. They've done a really good job. He's been on campus there, I believe, twice as much as any other school that he was considering up before these final two. I think he's been at Oregon's. I think he's been at Oregon 3 times this year in the calendar year, if I recall correctly, somewhere around there. But he's been to A&M like 10 times, and so pretty big difference there. As we know, you can pay for unofficial visits now in lieu of NIL. So that was something that's been going on around the country. If he goes to A&M, kind of a tough loss for Oregon, right? You've invested a lot of time here, a lot of resources. This would look great on your commit list. But as you and I know, and our Scoop Duck subscribers know, this isn't going to be a big cornerback class for Oregon. They're not taking 4 or 5 guys, and this doesn't leave them in a really tough spot. You'd love to have him. We don't want him anyways. But if you're Oregon, you can, continue going through the process, finding probably a couple cornerbacks that want to be Ducks and putting them with your very young roster that you have now and just keeping that thing nice and deep and full of young talent.
Yeah, I mean, you said a lot of great stuff there, Justin, and I know that you put your pick in for A&M earlier today, and our Scoop Duck subscribers kind of saw that first, so we're getting some more here on the podcast. But if you guys want, the earliest access to both Justin and I's picks, you got to go over to scoopduck.com and check us out there. Subscribe to us. It's a great time with so many commitments on the horizon here. But I'll be putting my pick in for A&M later on today to land Arrington as well. And I do think that this obviously would be a tough miss for Oregon, given that he's a top West Coast target, Southern California guy. And as the board kind of started to get smaller and smaller for Oregon at cornerback, Justin, I thought it was Davon Benjamin and Brandon Arrington Jr. But I really feel a lot better about where Oregon stands with Davon Benjamin, who was in town for his official visit this past weekend, and I think has really been their top DB target in this cycle for a while now. I mean, a guy that's been recruited by the Ducks for multiple years at this point. So we'll see what happens with Arrington, but we obviously know that NIL is a factor there, and we also know that he wants a path to playing time, and Oregon just doesn't historically play a lot of defensive backs early in their college careers unless they are, a bona fide proven difference maker. And I think that it's pretty widely agreed upon that he is an incredibly gifted player, but one that probably needs some more development and getting coached up before he's ready to see the field at the college level. So that's kind of the update. I guess you could say rip the Band-Aid off. If you're a Scoop Duck subscriber, that lingo gets tossed around, but we'll have an answer before too long with Brandon Arrington coming off the board on Thursday, Justin.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you'd love to have him on the commit list. I mean, if he was, we'd obviously be singing the praises and excited that he's a Duck. But at the end of the day, I think, expectations would need to have been tempered that, hey, this is a guy that still has all of the physical traits, all the athletic traits to be a truly elite cornerback. But if you were to start him and Davon Benjamin in a college game tomorrow, Davon Benjamin's going to fare better because he is the more polished product at cornerback. Doesn't mean he's necessarily better. I'm just saying he's a little bit farther along in his development. I think Brandon Arrington, you see what you've got there. You've got a pretty high floor with this young man because he's so gifted, and you've got a high ceiling. He's just going to have to work to get up to that ceiling. So both are great players. If A&M is the pick, that's a great pickup for them to go into California, get Brandon Arrington, get him on campus and develop him. As you and I both know, track and field is a big part of, not a big part, but a part of his recruitment and part of things he's talked about. And I know Oregon fans are very fond of the Oregon track and field, but Texas A&M track and field is absolutely no slouch as well. So, both those schools have both of those sports to offer at a high level.
Let's keep things rolling with another 5-star target on Oregon's board for 2026, Justin. If you guys are just joining us, thanks for being here on the Ducks Dish podcast. If you're watching us here on YouTube, just take a second, slow things down in your day, and hit that subscribe button. We'd love to have you as part of our YouTube community, and we always talk Ducks, so why wouldn't you want to subscribe? But let's keep things rolling, Justin. Let's talk about Jett Washington, a 5-star safety out of Las Vegas, Nevada, Bishop Gorman High School. He looks like he's done taking his visits right now. He was recently at Oregon for his official visit, also took official visits to Alabama and USC. And what do you know? On Tuesday, he announced that he is down to 3 schools, and those are the 3 that we just mentioned: Alabama, Oregon, and USC. But I think most people have widely viewed this one as an Oregon versus Alabama battle. That's kind of how we've been billing this recruitment for a while now. But Jett Washington's been one of the top prospects for Chris Hampton and Rashad Wadoud out there in the secondary. And it seems like, Justin, my kind of pulse on this one is that it's kind of becoming a matter of when, not if, for Jett Washington in Oregon. I think that also goes with the Jaira Edwards and Alabama smoke that has been out there lately, coming off of that official visit for the Baltimore native. So, Jett Washington hasn't set a commitment date. I don't know if he will at this point, but the Ducks are certainly in a great spot here with one of their very top defensive back targets.
Yeah, if we're going to deliver bad news, the best thing to do is follow it up with good news. And I feel like that's what we're doing here. I think Oregon's the team to beat for Jett Washington. Have felt pretty good about where Oregon stands here for, a better part of a week or so. And, like you said, it feels like this one's been trending towards a commitment, kind of been teased, been talked about, highly discussed, just hasn't put anything official out, hasn't made the commitment. One thing I will say here, and just talking about Brandon Arrington a little bit ago, and now Jett Washington, when you flip on the tape of Jett Washington, this is not a guy that needs development. Like, this kid's ready-made. This is a kid that you would get put on campus and he's ready to play. Equally as gifted athletically as Brandon Arrington, both are truly elite athletes, but Jett Washington is the more polished player today. And so if you're Oregon, you're kind of looking at those things and maybe thinking, hey, if it comes down to, dollars and cents and where the money goes, right now your return on Jett Washington is going to probably be a little bit more immediate. Just looking at that type of player. So I know that they play two different positions. Corner and safety are different positions, but Oregon has a need at both. So I like what Oregon's been able to do there. I think he's, going to be a tremendous player in college, probably going to be one of the better safeties that we've seen come through the Oregon program, should he commit to Oregon and stick with Oregon. And if you're Duck fans, I know some of them have been impatiently waiting for Jett Washington to make his commitment, but I mean, it's his commitment. It's his timeline. Let him do his thing. If it's today, great. If it's tomorrow, fine. If it's next week, let him do his thing. Don't get mad at the young man just, going through his recruitment and finalizing things in the process. If he was your son, you would absolutely want him to do the same thing.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that's the right approach to take on this thing. I think they're called fans for a reason, Justin. They're fanatics, and there's obviously a level of immediate gratification that comes with following recruiting and the social media world that we live in. They want it good news and they want it now. But I think you and I could both agree that Oregon's going to get theirs, and the growing feeling right now is that they're kind of maybe getting into that little run that they've been wanting to hit for a while now. So I think that Jett Washington's absolutely one you have to watch. And the interesting thing that I'll add here with Washington, Justin, I know that you have your pick on him to Oregon. Steve Wiltfong does as well. I think I'm going to put mine in later today, depending on when you guys are listening to this. But Jett Washington is huge, like really tall. I think he's listed at 6'4", 6'5", and that some of the people I've been talking to have just kind of been wondering, like, is this a guy that could potentially be too big to play safety once he gets to college? Like, someone the other day was telling me, like, could this guy be an edge rusher, maybe, like put his hand in the dirt, which sounds pretty bizarre when we're talking about a safety, but we have seen safeties come to Oregon and move down a level to play linebacker, not edge. Obviously, we're talking about Jeffrey Bossa and Jamal Hill in previous years. But what do you kind of make of that? Just how big of a frame Jett Washington has and how he could potentially fit in the Oregon defense?
Well, I think it sparks a discussion, probably, and not one that we should probably wade too far into today. But if we look at today's current makeup of college offenses or offenses in general, they're evolving, right? I mean, it's about getting players in space. It's a lot of passing game, but unfortunately, you need guys that are big enough to make tackles as well in the run game. And so what my point about that is a guy like Jett Washington, yeah, maybe he kind of grows into, maybe a linebacker or a hybrid linebacker safety. And I would guarantee you, if that's the case, Dan Lanning's going to find a spot for him out there. There is a spot in a defense for that. You're going to have to incorporate it. You're going to have to scheme around it. There's going to require a lot of communication, but there would be a fit for something like that. Now, in terms of getting him down into edge, moving 2 levels is pretty significant, and that's what you'd essentially be doing there. But just having somebody that kind of has all these physical traits that Jett Washington does, he would be able to make the physical tackles if needed. He's obviously fast enough and rangy enough to be able to move around in space. That's a valuable commodity in today's defense versus today's offenses. So I'd be really curious to see if there's different ways that he's utilized at Oregon or elsewhere. But I do see a lot of value in it, which I think is kind of what you were looking at from your point.
Yeah, that's all it really was. I think that I'm not here saying like, hey, this is the. I think Duck fans are going to laugh out of this. I'm not saying this is the Tim DeRuyter defense and we need to drop KT back in coverage more than is necessary. But I mean, he's an elite athlete. It feels like a cliche at this point saying, hey, that he's Kobe Bryant's nephew. I think everyone knows that at this point. But I think, bless you. But I think that's obviously going to be one that we have to keep our eye on here, Justin. No commitment date, but the feeling is that something could happen sooner rather than later, maybe even as soon as this week with Jett Washington. And before we get into the quarterback discussion, Justin, I want to talk about a little bit of a combination of some new news that we got at the linebacker position. It looks like Chad Simmons had it earlier today that Kenneth Goodwin isn't going to be making his official visit out to Oregon. This, of course, comes on the heels of a Michigan official visit. I think Georgia was also in the mix in his recruitment, may still be. But that is kind of one of the new notes that we have. And then both of us had a little conversation with Bo Jandreau out of Arizona, one of Brian Michalowski's top targets here at linebacker in the 26th class. So what's your reaction to the Goodwin news, and then just kind of where you think things are at with Bo Jandreau coming off that visit?
Yeah, I think it's going to be based on a couple things, and for starters, last week I kind of co-wrote with EJ Holland, who covers the Michigan beat. He'd asked me about Kenneth Goodwin, so I kind of chimed in with a little bit on Oregon side on Goodwin, and it had said at that point prior to the Michigan visit, Oregon's not really pushing that hard there for Goodwin, and I just felt like this was a very probable outcome, if you will, and I think twofold. If you're Oregon, you feel comfortable with this visit not happening this weekend, probably based on your conversations with Bo Jandreau this weekend, which you just mentioned a little bit ago. He essentially tells me that he's down to Texas, Oklahoma, and Oregon. And so if you look at Bo Jandreau and where he's ranked compared to Kenneth Goodwin and where he's ranked, and you say, this seems backwards. Well, Jandreau in his 3-star ranking has Texas, Oklahoma, and Oregon as his 3 finalists. So clearly he's a pretty good football player. Jandreau visits Oklahoma this weekend, but we'll just kind of have to see how that plays out with his brother, obviously, committing to Oklahoma as well. So, and again, we know about Tyler Atkinson, right? We know Oregon's taking a big swing there, and kind of what's at stake. And I think that one is a little bit more open than maybe fans think. I know everybody kind of had a peg to Georgia, myself included, but the more and more I hear, the more it sounds like, he's just not locked into Georgia, I guess is what I would say. So he obviously visits Texas this weekend, so there'll be a big player in his recruitment as well. So again, you and I were just talking about this with defensive back. I don't think you need to load up at linebacker in this class. Like, you don't need 6 dudes. You don't need 4 dudes. You probably just need 2 dudes, maybe 3 if it works out right. But let's not forget you've already got one committed. So Tristan Phillips is obviously firmly committed to Oregon at linebacker. So you're kind of just like in the hunt for one if you're Oregon, and some really good options. There's also a couple other options that we could talk about a later time. But that's what I make of that. I probably rambled way too long about linebacker recruiting than you intended, but there's the full scope.
No, I love it. I mean, I served it up for you, and you just kind of let it roll. So that's awesome. I think that Kenneth Goodwin, I kind of get the same feeling. I think Oregon could get him and is a realistic player in this class, but I haven't gotten the sense that there's been a huge push from the Oregon staff in that one. And then Jandreau kind of seems like a little bit of a wild card for me, just because obviously his brother is committed to Oklahoma, and I've asked him about the teaming up thing and, package deal a couple times. And it's kind of like, we've always been together. I think he had a wild quote, my last story, that I didn't include, but it was like, they haven't been to get apart for more than like 8 hours, which is insane to say. So I don't know if that makes you think even more that he's an Oklahoma lean, but that's kind of how I felt going into the Oregon visit. And I don't think Oregon hurt their chances. It's just, I think that could be one where the family aspect is really hard to overcome, but I think they took their shot. And that'll definitely be one that they kind of keep a pulse on if he ends up elsewhere. But Tyler Atkinson's obviously the big fish you got to keep an eye on. Nick Abrams is taking his official visit. I think he's probably the next name that you really have to keep an eye on here in this class, with Phillips already committed. And he's a guy that Oregon's really, really excited about. But Nick Abrams, another guy that you have some crossover there with Michigan. I know we were talking about EJ Holland earlier today. He's also got Alabama on his list. So Oregon's, I think, still very much alive with the Nick Abrams recruitment. And I think that could be the next name you see Oregon kind of shift their attention to heading into this weekend. And that's a little bit on some linebacker recruiting there, Justin. I know a lot of folks are excited about linebacker, and you got some great ones already on the roster: Braden Black, Kamar Matudi, Dylan Williams. To your point about not needing a lot of bodies this cycle. So, Justin, let's get into some quarterback recruiting. I know a lot of people were probably waiting to get into that because it feels like that's kind of the position that is really buzzing for Oregon right now. So let's talk about the newest name on the radar, and that is 2026 Vista Murrieta quarterback Bryson Beaver. I feel like my film is a little bit delayed here when I'm sharing my screen, so if it's too choppy, I might just take it down. but I'm trying to do my best to show you guys kind of what these guys have in store that we're talking about here. But the quick little synopsis with Bryson Beaver was committed to Boise State previously. Will Stein and Dan Lanning showed up to see him at the Redlands camp last week, and they extended an offer. And now he's going to be taking his official visit to Oregon this week. So weekend, I should say, once the Elite 11 finals wrap up in Los Angeles. So Will Stein's been looking for a quarterback this class, a true 2026. I feel like we have to say it a lot over on Scoop Duck on the message boards, but I think regardless of what happens with Rider Lions, who just took his official visit to Oregon last weekend, we know BYU is a big threat there as well. I think that Oregon wants a true 2026 quarterback. And right now, I would tend to think that Bryson Beaver is the guy that looks the most likely in this class. So, Justin, what do you make of where things are at here?
Yeah, definitely what I would call fluid, right? And that's just, I mean, that's what it's been the last month, really, or 3 weeks. I mean, it's, ever since Jared Curtis committed to Georgia, it feels like Oregon has had options, but has needed to explore all those options, right? It didn't feel like there was a clear, path after Jared Curtis. And that's fine. I would prefer a staff that's able to adapt and move and change with things. Bryce Beaver looks like a talented quarterback. Obviously Alabama, Ole Miss, and others instantly tried to jump in the mix after Oregon did as well. I know I believe he visited both this past week, and will finish at Oregon after Elite 11. So, kind of interesting there. You're right. I mean, Rider Lions is still in the mix, and it looks like it's BYU, and it looks like it's Oregon, but he's not really a 2026. Like, Oregon wants a true 2026. And to me, the real question becomes, Bryson Beaver, you kind of know what you're getting in terms of, when he'll graduate, when he would get to your school, and what he would do after that. Whereas Rider Lions, we believe, will take a 1-year mission. You never know. That could turn into a 2-year mission, a 1.5-year mission. But clearly there's some questions after he makes his commitment and graduates from high school. And then you have Matt Ponatoski. I know we'll talk about him here more in a minute, but some questions after his, commitment or signing or whatever you want to call it, in his future. So Bryson Beaver feels like the safe play. You know what I mean? You know what you're going to get. Good player. And I don't think you need somebody that's going to come in and win the job this next fall, right? That's not what you're after. You're after somebody come in, develop them, and hope that they're ready in a 2 to 3 year window potentially.
The Ducks certainly have no shortage of talent at the quarterback position, and who knows, we might be looking at 2 years of Dante Moore. Maybe we'll see some Austin Novosad in the mix there. Luke Moga seems like a complete wild card in this situation, and he just looks better every time you get to see him. Granted, we don't get to see him very much because that room is so loaded with talent, so the spring game is kind of all we have to go on. But based on some of the conversations that I've had, Justin, I feel like we might be seeing a little bit of Moga this year. I don't think that means he's going to start, but maybe they'll get some packages for him because I think he's a really exciting weapon for Will Stein in this offense. And we can open up the discussion to Ponatoski here as well. I don't think that there's too much more I have to add there with Beaver. I think that you have obviously Ole Miss as one of the main competitors here. Alabama did just get a commitment on Tuesday. I think it was that they flipped the Iowa State commit. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but that kind of doesn't take Alabama off the board completely for Beaver. He told me in the interview that they might take 2 quarterbacks this cycle. But I think you feel really good about Oregon's chances with Beaver because he is a West Coast guy, SoCal guy. And I'll just add here that it looks like this is the second straight year that Oregon's kind of involved with a late riser, right? Last year it was JKS, who eventually ended up committing back to Cal, transferring to Cal, but just saw his stock take off right around the same time that we're seeing here with Beaver at the Elite 11 finals. So I liked what I saw from Beaver. I'm going to get another closer look at him today at the Pro Day event for the Elite 11 finals. Ponatoski is a guy we have to talk about. He'll also take his official visit to Oregon this weekend, which is an interesting development, Justin, because I remember when I was talking to Beaver after his Oregon offer came in, and he was saying that Will Stein kind of likes to keep the quarterbacks separate on official visits, kind of give each of them their weekends, but that's not the time, isn't really a luxury that Oregon has right now. This is their last opportunity for official visits this month, so they're going to get both of them on campus. And I just want to say, getting to see Ponatoski last night at the Elite 11 finals, my God, that dude can rip it. It is super fun to watch that guy throw. The ball looks great coming off his hand. It's lively. You can see the baseball overlap with the different arm angles and the arm talent he has. Loved his footwork and just how light on his feet he is. But this is a dude, you can see why he won the Gatorade Player of the Year for both football and baseball. I think Oregon's got two good options here. And you'd love to get Ponatoski in the fold if you could, but baseball really does feel like a serious part of that equation. And I think you want a little bit more certainty if I'm Oregon.
Yeah, all great points. And what I was pretty much what I was going to say too. I mean, with baseball being a wild card in Ponatoski's recruitment, you don't know what that means. I mean, more than likely, if he's the Gatorade Baseball Player of the Year as a junior, he's probably going to go back and play baseball as a senior. So this isn't a guy you're going to get on campus in January. He's going to stay, finish his senior year. And that's not just for Oregon, that's for anybody. So that becomes a little bit of a wild card. He'll finish that baseball season. And then here, basically a year from now is when the MLB draft is. So then, okay, does this kid ever end up stepping foot on your campus? Does he simply go from, high school to, Major League Baseball, which, is happens in baseball much more than any other pro sport. So a lot of question marks there in terms of that, maybe not in terms of ability, but just those things. And like you said, I think the Elite 11 being this week kind of screwed up Oregon's plans of maybe getting one of them to visit midweek and one of them to visit on the weekend. You have no other choice. Bring them both in this weekend and just kind of see where the cards fall. So, I think it's going to be really tough for Oregon to take both and Rider Lions, but maybe if they're not feeling great on Rider Lions, they roll the dice and take both. And again, Ponatoski might not ever step on your campus. So I don't know. There's no perfect answer here, right? Because we also don't know if Dante Moore will stick around for 2 years or play for 1 year. I mean, just so many pieces. And that's why I'll say it again. I said it a couple weeks ago. I am not worried about quarterback recruiting. If Oregon missed on all three of them, on Ponatoski, Beavers, and Lions, I still wouldn't be worried. I hope they don't. That wouldn't be ideal. But even if they did, I still wouldn't be that concerned because of what they have now, the fact that they could pivot into 27 and they could find a transfer if they needed to. So, again, not worried about quarterback recruiting. I would love to see them get any combination of Ponatoski and Beaver with Lions. That would be preferable. If that doesn't work out, I'm still not panicking. This to me is offensive tackle, much different situation than quarterback for me.
And then there's the other layer to it that is like super complicated and I need to do a little bit more research on it. But like, what if someone in 27 reclasses? Like, that's something that could potentially enter the mix here. There's just so many different possibilities at quarterback. And obviously you'd like them to get Lions and a true 26, like we've been kind of laying out here. But Oregon is fortunate enough to be in a spot at the top of the sport or, near the top of the sport. They have plenty of funds and resources to make sure that they have a quarterback that can go out there and play winning football for them. So I echo everything you said. I think that it'd be great for Oregon to continue doing what they're doing with some of these high school guys and trying to get them in the fold. But they're not going to find themselves lacking talent at the most important position on the field. So that's kind of that with the quarterback recruiting, Justin. We're coming up on 30 minutes, so I feel like we've hit a lot of really good stuff here, but maybe we just kind of wrap it up with our final thoughts ahead of, maybe we'll be back later this week, but maybe just a look ahead thought to what is Oregon's final official visit weekend.
Yeah, with some commitments coming up, I get the feeling that whether it's a commit podcast or even just a preview of the official visitors, you and I will be back this week. So plenty for these folks to digest today. And remember, news changes every hour. So tomorrow's podcast or Friday's podcast could be completely different than today's. So just roll with the punches, guys.
Yeah, it seems like that's the best way to follow recruiting right now. You also have Joey O'Brien, an elite defensive back. He's supposed to announce his college commitment on Friday. I don't feel like it's going to be Oregon right now, but hey, you never know. Things could change in the next hour. Things could change tomorrow. It is all incredibly fluid, and we are doing our very best to keep up with all of it over at scoopduck.com, which is why we want you guys to come check us out, be a part of the community, join thousands of other Duck fans on our message boards, sign up for the Scoop Duck newsletter to get everything right to your inbox. We also have the On3 app, so you get push notifications when news pops off. We're just really trying to make it the one-stop shop for all things Ducks. And we also have the Rivals merger coming in July, which is going to make it an even better place to be. But that's Justin Hopkins. You can tap in with him on any social media platform at jhopkinssd. Find me at mtorres sports. Subscribe to the Scoop Duck On3 YouTube channel, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.